What if one dense document decided whether you paid more tax, whether your road gets fixed next year, or even how stable your job is? Spoiler, it does. Every year, the UK government publishes its major fiscal update, usually the autumn statement or a full budget, delivered by the Chancellor of the Exchequer. It's big, it's complicated, and most people ignore it. But ignoring it means ignoring the single biggest force shaping your wallet, your job prospects, and the direction of the entire UK economy. And with borrowing costs now sitting near 15 to 20-year highs, this year's statement matters more than ever. The government may need either new tax rises, tighter spending, or both to meet its fiscal rules. So let's stop guessing, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what the budget really is, what decisions are being made behind the scenes, and how those decisions affect you. So let's get into it. Think of the budget as the UK's annual financial plan. It tells you how much money the government expects to collect, known as revenue, and how it plans to spend that money, known as expenditure. But this isn't just accounting. It's a political roadmap, a signal of what the government wants to prioritise, encourage, or discourage. The Treasury often frames this as delivering for working people through investment and growth. And whether you agree or not, this is the heart of what economists call fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is the government steering the economy. Sometimes they accelerate it, and sometimes they tap the brakes. And to understand how they do that, we need to clear up two terms people constantly mix up: debt and deficit. Now, a deficit is how much the government overspends this year. If it spends more than it raises in revenue, that gap is the deficit. The Office for Budget Responsibility, or the OBR for short, forecasts this every year and assesses the impact of different policies. But the national debt is the total amount the country owes after adding every deficit and subtracting every surplus over time. And the key number here isn't the debt itself, it's the debt to GDP ratio, which compares the size of the debt to the size of the economy. So if GDP grows, the government has a larger tax base and the debt becomes easier to manage. If GDP stalls or falls, that ratio gets worse. This is why growth matters so much. So where does the money come from? Well, mainly from you through taxes and from investors through government borrowing. Now, we have major UK taxes like income tax, national insurance, and VAT, each with different trade-offs. Income tax is progressive. The more you earn, the higher the percentage you pay, based on the idea of fairness and the ability to pay. Now, VAT is a consumption tax, and it's regressive because lower income households spend a larger share of their income just to live. So the same VAT rate hits them harder. But VAT does encourage saving because only spending is taxed. Before every budget, rumours circulate about changes to things like capital gains tax or stamp duty land tax. Those choices signal what the government is prioritising: fairness, investment, property stability, or economic growth. And when tax revenue isn't enough to cover the cost of running the country, the government borrows. It issues bonds, known as gilts, which investors buy. But borrowing today creates obligations tomorrow, and a growing share of the budget is now spent just paying interest on the national debt. So where does all of this money go? Well, government spending falls into two main categories. The first is annual managed expenditure, or AME for short. This includes spending driven by law or by economic conditions, which the government can't easily change each year without rewriting legislation. It includes the state pension, which costs over 124 billion, welfare benefits, debt interest, and certain public sector pension payments. These costs are largely locked in. The second category is Departmental Expenditure Limits, or DEL for short. This is the controllable spending that Parliament approves, and departments must live within these budgets. DEL covers most NHS funding, defence, education, policing, transport, scientific research, and new infrastructure projects. This is where real political battles happen. because every new initiative, like hiring 10,000 nurses, must be paid for by cutting another program, raising taxes, or borrowing more money. Now here's the big problem. Governments are terrible at cutting inefficient programs. Road and transport projects, for example, can have benefit to cost ratios ranging from around 1:1 to well over 20:1, yet funding rarely shifts from poor projects to better ones. Now why is this? Anchoring, loss aversion, and status quo bias. Once a project exists, politicians fear the backlash of cancelling it more than the reward of backing something more effective. So the budget often becomes a museum of legacy decisions, some great, some questionable. And all of this affects the wider economy. Think of the government as adjusting the national throttle. Expansionary policy is the accelerator. More spending or lower taxes to boost growth during downturns. Contractionary policy is the brake. Lower spending or higher taxes to cool inflation when the economy overheats. And when the government spends money, two forces compete. The multiplier effect means £1 of government spending can generate more than £1 of economic activity. A new rail line creates construction jobs, which increases spending in cafes and shops, which encourages investment and hiring. But the crowding out effect happens when heavy borrowing pushes up the demand for borrowing across the economy, which can then increase interest rates. Higher rates makes it more expensive for households and businesses to borrow, which can then cancel out the benefits of government spending. Economists argue about which effect dominates, but they generally agree on one thing. Stimulus works best when it's short-term and targeted. So what does this mean for you? Your job prospects are affected because high borrowing and high interest rates make it more expensive for companies to invest. Sectors like manufacturing, construction, and tech feel it first, while lower rates can trigger hiring rebounds. Your cost of living is influenced because excessive spending can contribute to inflation, which erodes purchasing power, and tax changes directly affect your take-home pay. The quality of your public services is shaped by budget choices, with cuts or reallocation showing up in waiting times, school funding, transport reliability, and local services. Now, the government's budget isn't just a list of numbers, it's the UK's economic blueprint. Now you understand where money comes from, how it gets spent, the difference between AME and DEL, and how policies like the multiplier and crowding out shape the economy. Understanding the budget means understanding the forces acting on your money, and it gives you the power to hold leaders accountable. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more videos just like this one. If you're keen to learn more about finance, be sure to check out the industryportal.com link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep growing, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next video.